Kurt. I play guitar and I sing.
What do you want to know?
And we're Nirvana.
We're white boy guitar oriented rock.
Kurt Cobain was one of the most iconic rock stars of the early 90s and a pioneer of the grunge scene. With more monthly listeners on Spotify than the Foo Fighters, it's safe to say that Cobain's music still resonates with today's generation.
How would you define the music of Nirvana?
Cobain's music with Nirvana contrasted the trends of the 1980s hair metal, diverging from the decade's glam, synth pop, and polished production. In contrast, Cobain's work in the late 80s, particularly with Nirvana's first album, Bleach, began with a heavy influence from the punk scene.
Punk rock should mean freedom, liking and accepting anything that you like, playing whatever you want, as sloppy as you want, as long as it's good and it has passion.
I was intimidated when I first started playing guitar by really professional musicians, like heavy metal musicians who are very anal and technical, and promoted the fact that they can play good, and that made me not ever think of playing rock and roll realistically, or ever making a career out of it, or actually going for it and doing it. But when I heard punk rock, it made me realize that these people are a lot like me,
Nirvana's breakout album, Nevermind, became a massive contributor to the raw, unpolished ethos of grunge, which was a shift towards a more melodic yet gritty sound.
It was just the right album at the right time,
But they're saying that you're the newest of the new grunge sound.
Yeah, I'm starting to understand what grunge is. It's like if you have heavy metal, it's like a lot of it's the same guitar sound. I think grunge has to do with the guitar sound. Grunge is more organic guitars, like totally growly, like a different sound.
Growly,
yeah.
He drew inspiration from various bands that can be credited as co-founders of the grunge scene. Pixies, whose dynamic shifts from quiet to loud heavily influenced Nirvana's sound. He was also inspired by the sludgy, heavy sounds of the Melvins. And the straightforward, distorted guitars of Black Sabbath. Blending these influences into a unique sound that balanced melodic elements with aggressive distortion and feedback. This innovative combination brought the underground sounds of punk and heavy rock to a mainstream audience, doing so with a level of imperfection and rawness that was uncommon in popular music at the time. This was a departure from the technical solos and complex compositions that characterized much of rock music from the 1980s.
We were playing punk rock underground clubs, and we thought it would be really funny to test that out on those kind of people, to see if they would be able to swallow more of a clean pop, sound, and see if we can get away with it, because we love that kind of music. We like a lot of commercial music that's good, most of it's old. Most of the old commercial stuff we like.
When it came to playing guitar, Kurt threw theory out the window and relied on his own taste and ear for what sounded good. His use of chords and progressions owes more to his punk and alternative rock sensibilities, focusing on the emotional impact rather than the strict adherence to theoretical practices. One Melvins song that inspired Kurt Cobain is Boris from their 1991 album Bullhead. The song features sludgy, down-tuned guitars that create a heavy, ominous sound. This influence is evident in Nirvana songs like Paper Cuts, you can hear that distinct, dissonant grunge sound in Scentless Apprentice. In radio-friendly Unit Shifter, Kurt employs atonal noise to create an atmosphere of chaos. This example is more about texture and dissonance than traditional chord progressions.
I
I'm such a shitty guitar player that I couldn't really be that great of a frontman and play guitar, but now that I've studied tablature of Guitar World magazine, I've gotten a lot better.
When it comes to gear, Kurt either played Fender, Jaguar, or Mustang guitars. While many Jags and Mustangs fell victim to Kurt's post-show antics, he was passionate about tracking down new versions of both of these guitars. At one point, Kurt decided he needed a hybrid of these guitars and sent a photo cutout of both guitars into a Frankenstein guitar he creatively titled the Jagstang.
And I'm having Fender build me a special guitar that's like a mixture of a Mustang and a Jaguar. Yeah, I took a picture of a Jaguar with a Polaroid and a picture of a Mustang, and then cut them down the middle and glued them together and said, "Build this."
Fender honored his legacy by putting the Jagstang into production, and we are thrilled to showcase this guitar today.
Oh
the Jagstang.
My God. The Jagstang.
So this was released by Fender for the 30th anniversary of Nevermind. It looks really interesting. Could you just give me some of your first impressions about the guitar?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've ever gotten my hands on a Jagstang officially. Because I love short scale guitars and offset guitars, but the versatility of this, because I'd say the Jaguar is amongst the most versatile Fender guitars. It has like almost too much you can do with it. And this guitar is like that, but a little less crazy, and you can really blend the pickups a number of different ways. Yeah, just the sound of it. It's like the only way to like fully authentically get some of those Nirvana tones.
Right.
That chord progression is so cool. Again, it's like all major. You've got like, for the music theory nerds out there, you've got the 1 chord, and then you go to the 3 chord, 6 chord, 4 chord. That's all belonging to the major key. And then things get weird here, where all of a sudden you're jumping around to this note. So the flat 6 chord, that is borrowing from minor. And then you go to the flat 7 chord of the key, again, doesn't belong. And then you like come back to where you started. Like that's such a beautiful movement.
So Kurt's tone is something that a lot of people talk about and try to emulate, particularly his use of sound and distortion. The DS1.
Oh yeah.
This would have been what he used.
If I were to build a little collection of equipment that would get me through like almost any Nirvana track, it would be for sure the Boss DS1, Boss DS2, because at a certain point he ended up using the DS2, which was just like the DS1 but kind of like revamped. And then there's the Electro Harmonix Big Muff Pi, which is like a nice fuzzy overdrive pedal that he used on a couple tracks, less frequently than the DS1 and DS2, but still. And then the Proco Rat 2 is another pretty cool, unruly fuzz distortion. Fender Twin Reverb. He used the Fender Bassman at times as well. Mesa Boogie, Studio Preamp. And I think I've encountered songs where he used like a Vox AC30. If you mix and match any of those, you'd probably get a pretty believable Nirvana tone. So, I mean, if you're on a budget, maybe stick with the DS1, DS2, Twin Reverb.
Cool. It wasn't just Kurt's guitar that saw heavy distortion. It was also his voice. When it comes to a technical standpoint, I can't recommend doing what Kurt did with his vocals, although it sounded great.
He started blowing out his voice, so he went to go see this vocal coach. And he put this cassette in the cassette player of the warm-ups that this guy wanted him to do. And it was like me, 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 me. And we sat and we laughed like hell as we listened to it and then threw the cassette away.
He often performed without traditional vocal warm-ups or techniques designed to protect the voice, leading to instances of vocal fatigue and damage. Kurt may have eventually sensed the long-term effects of his technique on his voice.
It might be nice to eventually start playing acoustic guitars and be thought of as a singer and a songwriter rather than a grunge rocker, you know? Because then I might be able to take advantage of that when I'm older and sit down on a chair and play acoustic guitar like Johnny Cash or something, you know?
Despite this, the emotional authenticity of his performance style left a lasting impact on the grunge scene. I've always created abstracts. I love dreams that don't make sense. I'd rather watch a film that doesn't have a plot. Most of my lyrics don't connect because I've taken lines from a lot of poems of mine and put them together. I'll make up a theme well after the fact, oftentimes while I'm being interviewed.
In Teen Spirit, you seem to complain about the apathy of our generation. Is that right?
Whatever you want to make out of it, it's up to you.
It's open for interpretation, eh?
Yeah, that's it.
My lyrics are a big pile of contradictions. They're split down the middle between very sincere opinions and feelings that I have, and sarcastic and hopefully humorous rebuttals towards cliché bohemian ideals that have been exhausted for years. In later years, particularly with the In Utero album, Kurt began to consider the lyrics of his work more carefully.
I find myself having to come up with explanations for it, you know, so I thought I'd, you know, prevent that this time and actually have an explanation for some of the songs at least.
It must have been like 1989, 1990, and we were cruising in this van, and I think we were listening to Surfer Rosa. And Kurt was sitting there in the chair, and he raises his finger and makes a decree. He goes, "This shall be our snare sound."
Surfer Rosa, the Pixies.
The Pixies, Surfer Rosa, yeah. So there you go. That we ended up in working with Steve.
While Nirvana's explosive success on Nevermind likely stemmed from the beautiful mix of the then producer Butch Vig, Kurt Cobain was determined to work with Steve Albini for their final record, In Utero.
We've been thinking about Steve Albini forever. We've been wanting to have him produce us since around Bleach, actually. If we could have got him for Bleach, we would have done that.
Kurt became enamored with Steve Albini's ability to capture an authentic recording with minimal studio embellishment.
Butch Vig's production aesthetic and his approach as an engineer was formed in precisely the same way that mine was, doing budget records for dead broke bands in a short amount of time, trying to be as efficient as possible with not just with the time, but with the materials.
The recording style of In Utero landed it somewhere between the rawness of Bleach and the more refined production of Nevermind. Interestingly, Kurt even provided recommendations for bass and treble settings on the stereo, which were included on the record's back cover. As an artist, Kurt Cobain's sensibilities played a crucial role in the shaping of Nirvana's image and contributed significantly to the band's identity.
Kurt was going to have an art scholarship. And he dropped out he dropped out in May of his senior year.
It's too much reality for me.
One thing many people don't know about Kurt was his love of sculpting and painting. Cobain's approach to visual art was closely aligned with his musical themes, gritty, raw, and authentic, often infused with a sense of irony and his fascination with anatomy, childbirth, vulnerability, and mortality.
I've always been just fascinated with medical texts and charts, and I guess I secretly want to be a doctor or something, I don't know.
Here you can see that those recurring themes of life, death, birth, and wombs present themselves in all of his art and sculptures. Expressing himself in multiple art forms allowed Cobain to approach music holistically. His disregard for tradition created an environment of creative freedom, encouraging experimentation and innovation. His legacy teaches us that the essence of creativity isn't found in perfection or technical prowess, but in personal expression of our experiences, emotions, and the world as we perceive it. To the musicians who find themselves at a crossroads, grappling with the expectations of others or the daunting quest for originality, let Kurt's story be your inspiration. The path to true artistic genius doesn't lie in mimicking the sound of others or adhering to the rigid frameworks of what's considered good music. It lies in trusting your instincts, exploring what you think sounds good, and daring to present your own unique sound. In closing, Chris said it best in his eulogy to Kurt. Kurt had an ethic toward his fans that was rooted in the punk rock way of thinking. No band is special, no player royalty. If you've got a guitar and a lot of soul, just bang something out and mean it. You're the superstar. Plugging the tones and rhythms that are uniquely and universally human. That's the level that Kurt spoke to us on In Our Hearts, and that's where he and the music will always be forever.
Shave your head and wear a dress.